Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the El Cajon City Council meeting. The meeting is now called to order. And I'd like to ask our city clerk to please call the roll.
All council members are present.
Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing afterwards for a brief moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The city clerk posted orders of adjournment of the February 25th, 2025 meeting and the agenda of the March 11th, 2025 meeting in accordance with state law, city council, and housing authority policy. We have no presentations on today's agenda, and that brings us to agenda changes. Staff, do you have any agenda changes?
No, sir.
Council? Seeing none. That brings us to consent items. Consent items are routine matters enacted by one motion according to the recommendation listed below. With the concurrence of the City Council, a council member or person in attendance may request discussion of a consent item at this time. Council members, do you wish to pull any of the consent items? Staff?
No.
Angela, do you have any speaker cards for consent items?
We do not, sir.
Then I'll make a motion to approve the consent items.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
We're now at public comment. At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time that the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. However, City Council and Housing Authority members may briefly respond to statements or questions, and an item may be placed on a future agenda. Answers, we have any speaker cards for public comment.
We only have one, sir, from Brenda Hammond.
Hi, Brenda. Come on up. I saw you in the rain out there. How you doing?
I won't melt. I'm a good person. I was going to say I'm a good witch, but somebody told me not to say that. So I didn't get to write anything down yet. But this morning when I was up at Walmart in the clearance area, I found this elephant, and I don't know why I thought about you guys. It could be good or bad, so I'll drop that off to your clerk. It's for you. It's cute, huh?
I think
it rolls.
Can we give it to Phil? He's the one with the youngest kids.
Oh, well, you can do what you want with it.
All right, Phil, you get the elephant.
You
Yeah.
can do what you want with it. It rolls. It's wooden.
Very kind of you.
So I don't know if you guys heard that I lost my hat. Did I tell you that? You know, my hat with all the pins on it?
Didn't hear that.
Was going from here to Santee, and it blew out the window. I was so sad. So I said something at the council meeting at Santee's, and they said they were going to get the sheriff's department to give me a ticket for littering. And but then somebody else said, "Oh no, it happened in El Cajon." So I don't. Somewhere between El Cajon and Santee, it blew out the window. So, but I do have my mother's pin, her Lemon Grove pin, because she passed on Thursday. And before you get sad about it, she went the way she wanted to. Right, Graham? Graham, I have mentors in this room that I talk to about these things. So anyway, I wanted to thank you for everything, and I'm so waiting to dance. I'm putting on weight. I need to dance. So thank you for being here and everything. And this elephant is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I don't know what that meaning of elephant in the room. I don't know what that means, but it's a good thing.
Well, it just means something that's so important that you can't not discuss it.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
Oh, then I'm going to work on that. Thank you.
Brenda, thank you for coming. You're always a delight to hear.
This may be one of the shortest council meetings we've ever had. So there are no written communications, no public hearings, no administrative reports, and no commission reports on today's agenda. That brings us to our council activities. Mine is as reported. And let's go through Mr. Goebel. As reported. Ms. Kendrick. As reported. Ms. Mitchell.
As reported.
And Mr. Ortiz.
As reported.
We have two joint council member reports on today's agenda. Item 12 is from Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick and myself. And Gary, do you mind if I start with this? Go ahead. This resolution is a resolution that I asked the Stand With Us organization to help me come up with, because all my life I have been disturbed by anti-Semitism. It seems so random, it seems so unfair, and the violence perpetrated and the hatred towards the Jewish people has been something that has always touched me. Not having grown up Jewish, I'm not completely sure why it has affected me so much, but it really has. And growing up, I went to school like all of us and studied the Holocaust, studied the things that happened to the Jewish people. And I was always under the belief that when my professors and my teachers in high school said, but we've all decided as a nation that, and as the world, to never let this happen again, never again. And I always took comfort and solace in that because I believed it. I thought we are way past the kind of cruelty and blind bigotry that would allow the persecution of a group of people like this. And I honestly believed that that was going to be the case. But the world has changed, and anti-Semitism is rabid in the United States right now. It's everywhere. It's all over the campuses. It's in the cities. It's on the streets. People calling for genocide. People calling for death to the Jewish people. It's not just in America. I see it all throughout Europe, all throughout the Middle East. It's on the rise again, and if anybody's a student of history, they know what happens when anti-Semitism is allowed to burn bright without any attempt to put that fire out. So I'm asking the City Council today to be willing to help us write a resolution that would stand up for our belief that the anti-Semitism is wrong and should be combated. And that's why I brought this today. And I asked Mr. Kendrick to be involved because he has an even closer connection to anti-Semitism than I do, and I'd like him to tell you about that.
Well, a lot of you may know, because I've said it in the past, that my mother was living in Czechoslovakia back in 1939 when Chamberlain gave half of Czechoslovakia to Hitler without a shot being fired. And she had a lot of Jewish friends, and a lot of them disappeared. Her best friend, Herta, from first grade until she would have been my mom would have been about 20 years old when that happened, when the Nazis came in. Her best friend was crying one time, talking to her, goes, "Why are they doing this to us? What do we do to them?" Then she came over to her house one day, knocked on the door, and somebody that she didn't know opened the door, same furniture, same throw rug, but the family was gone. And she knew you're not supposed to ask where'd they go. And she passed away my mom passed away at age 95, and when she was about 90, she still had nightmares about her friend and what possibly could have happened to her. And she worked for a Jewish carpet company owner, and they took him away one day to wash cars, and they took him away again about a week later, and no one saw him again. And my grandfather took me to the Dachau concentration camp at age 12, which is probably a little bit too early, and they had pictures of the gas chambers, and we were standing in the gas chamber, and you could see the scratch marks on the ceiling where people would form a pyramid as they're gasping for air, scratching at the ceiling to get out. And I agree with what the mayor has to say. Over 6 million Jews were murdered by the Nazi regime. We actually had a Jewish dentist that was working right across the street from City Hall that was murdered. And in Germany, those Jews were refugees and asylum seekers. When they tried to flee, most countries, including the United States, didn't let them in. So I agree with Bill that we need to protect the Jewish refugees from discrimination. There's a lot of folks now in the same situation. There are refugees and asylum seekers all over facing prejudice in the United States. So I agree with the mayor. We need to formally condemn all racism against refugees and asylum seekers. So I would make a motion to formally add a line to this resolution condemning racism against any immigrant, refugee, or asylum seeker. The city, I think it's important for the city to do that, and this is supposed to be a city of love and not hate. So thank you.
Here. I'd be happy to sign up to that change. Let me open this up to public comment, and then we can come back and discuss. We have speaker cards for this item?
Sir, we do. In addition to the cards submitted, you guys did receive several emails, some in opposition, some in support. So I just wanted to say that for the record.
Okay,
and
thank you.
currently I have 13 speaker cards.
Okay.
The first one is from Vicky Estrella. Vicky?
Good afternoon, council members. I'm here before you to ask you to vote no on this resolution. I stand with you, Mr. Kendrick, in your solidarity with the Jewish victims of the Holocaust, and I agree that it should never happen again. As a child, I read about Anne Frank. As an adult, I visited her home. We went to Mauthausen concentration camp in Austria. It's a deplorable situation, but you cannot conflate Zionism with Judaism. If someone is critical of Israel, that does not make them critical of Jewish people. Judaism is a beautiful religion, thousands of years old. Zionism is a fairly recent ideology which promotes hatred, white and religious supremacy. You probably know that human rights organizations such as Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and even Israeli B'Tselem have said that Israel society is an apartheid state. And that means different rules. They are oppressed. It's a white settler colonial state, and they oppress the indigenous Palestinian people. Doctors Without Borders and Human Rights Watch, as well as the ICJ, have said that Israel has practiced acts which are consistent with genocide. So you should not be silencing the voices who would oppose the bombing of children, the torture and abduction of doctors, the killing of ambulance drivers, the bombing of universities. They have destroyed the whole country, or the whole Gaza Strip with our tax dollars. Should I be prohibited from voicing my opinion that this is wrong, that while we have tens of thousands of people literally on the streets, where 60,000 plus Americans die for lack of health care, we should be sending them billions of dollars to bomb children? No, we should be free to speak out against this same kind of oppression as we should against what happened in the Holocaust. And, you know, speaking of lessons, well, most of the information I've learned is from Israeli people and Jewish people. Dr. Norman Finkelstein, whose parents were the only survivors in their entire families from the Nazi Holocaust, taught their kids that never again means never again. Not just against Jewish people, it means genocide, and massacres should not be committed against any peoples. So let's be logical and let's be honest. This is a ploy, it's a tactic but to silence dissent against what Israel is doing. Do not give them carte blanche to commit more murders and genocide. Thank you.
Jamal Kanj.
Yeah, my name is Jamal Kanj, zip code 92021. I'm here to ask you to remove IRA definition from the resolution. IRA, I-H-R-A, the International Holocaust Remembrance. The definition has been used to label legitimate criticism of Israel as anti-Semitic, even when that criticism addresses human rights violations or international law. This poses a serious threat to free speech. Real anti-Semitism, like hate crimes, harassment, and conspiracy theories, must be confronted directly. But the definition of IRA dilutes those efforts by mislabeling political speech as hate speech. Kenneth Stern, the one who authored IRA, told us that it was never intended to be codified into law or policy. Doing so risks weaponizing it against marginalized voices. This is the writer of IRA. I strongly urge the Council to reject IRA definition of anti-Semitism and instead support inclusive measures that effectively combat anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in your own community without suppressing legitimate political discourse. Thank you.
Doris Bitar.
Good afternoon. I really appreciate your concerns about the Jewish community and their safety, and I think language that supports the practice of religion and the disavowal of stereotypes is very, very important. But we can't compromise our constitutional amendment while we do that and suppress dissent, which could lead to discussion, which could lead to resolution of problems. I am Lebanese Palestinian. I'm married to a Jewish man, and we have 2 children. And I want them protected from discrimination from both sides. And when I hear that we can't criticize Israel, and we can still, I believe, criticize our own country here, there's real dissonance there. There's a disconnect. And so we need to come up with language that does not squash our First Amendment rights, does not squash discussion. Dissenting voices are what make this country great. And so we need to move forward with language that protects everyone equally. I can criticize the Philippines, I can criticize Egypt, which I do, which I criticize Syria and many, many different countries in this planet. But if I'm told I can't criticize Israel and their policies, what does that tell my children? That it's okay for the Lebanon and Palestine to be criticized and demeaned and degraded? Discrimination is up by 300% in the Arab and Muslim community, but they can't criticize Israel. Doesn't make any sense. Your decision on the language and where you go with it has consequences. Columbia University student Mahmoud Khalil was taken because his student visa expired. It turns out he didn't have a student visa, he had a green card. And he's in a Louisiana prison. This just happened this past weekend. And what gave Columbia University the permission to let that happen is New York State adopted the Holocaust remembrance definition. And this state has too. Be courageous, do the right thing, have language that is meaningful to all groups, and does not squash our First Amendment rights. Thank you.
Next speaker is Jose Cortez.
Hello. Haven't been to City Council in a long time, but I'm happy to be here speaking about this issue. I'm a longtime El Cajon resident. I went to Valhalla High School. My dad graduated as a naturalized U.S. citizen from El Cajon Valley High School. My mom's taught literally thousands of students in Lakeside. So I have very deep roots and a lot of investment in my community where I've lived for 35 years. Watching it really these conversations kind of shift in a more reactionary and anti-immigrant way in a lot of these spaces is really disappointing, and I just want to address how it really makes longtime residents like myself unsafe and doesn't really address the real root of our issues. The issue that's being addressed here today is the discussion around a resolution for denouncing anti-Semitism, and I think we can all agree that anti-Semitism is on the rise. I was outside of the synagogue in 2019 where that white supremacist shooter killed that innocent woman. And I've seen that the language that's used is oftentimes overlooking the very real attacks that are happening on a lot of our communities, non-white communities, immigrant communities, and also Jewish people as well. And I really wanted to talk about what was discussed earlier, the IRA definition that's oftentimes conflated as the answer to this issue. The IRA definition has been lobbied heavily, as been discussed previously, but it doesn't really address the fundamental issue of white supremacy, of the crises that we're encountering kind of simultaneously that fuel it. And even the person who helped found and draft the IRA definition, Kenneth Stern, who we heard about a little earlier, is pointing out that it's being used more effectively as a bludgeon to stifle dissent, to stifle conversations on campuses and workplaces, and it's not really serving the purpose that it was initially intended. And that's because 7 of 11 of its named examples specifically point to Israel and basically any critique or mention of Israel as a cause of anti-Semitism. That's why over 350 prominent Jewish scholars, Holocaust historians, and Jewish organizations have spoken out against it and instead promoted the Jerusalem Declaration on Anti-Semitism in its place as a starting point, at the very least. So myself, as a community organizer, a longtime El Cajon and East County resident, I really just wanted to bring these issues up to the council to let them know they're very controversial and oftentimes, let's just say, uncomfortable reality of this declaration and how it's conflated to stand as a one-for-one for safety when it's really not. And really what our city needs, rather than just platitudes or resolutions, is a real dialogue with community-based organizations that do this work, the ones that are basically going out and trying to fight anti-Semitism alongside anti-racism. So please consider it.
Melanie Bennett.
Hello.
Good afternoon. I am here as a long-time resident of El Cajon. Have been, in the beginning, El Cajon is the ugliest city. I come from the ugliest city in the world, I would say to people and friends. These days, I am so proud of what's been happening in El Cajon. I love the look of it. I love the changes. However, I am deeply distressed and very upset that my town is not a welcoming town right now. It isn't a city of love. It is a city of hate right now towards each other because of where we come from. And it's due to fear. Why are people afraid of each other? Well, we've been riled up to do that. When you meet people face to face and talk to them face to face, you'll see that most of us want the same things. We want a beautiful future for our families. We want safety. We want to get along with each other and have a nice community. And that's what El Cajon should be right now. It should be a stellar example of what a city should be, of love, of caring, of respect for others. This resolution idea of using a definition to, stop anti-Semitism is not what's needed. What we need is a way to dialogue, communicate. We want to have people be able to say, oh my gosh, I am so appalled at what is happening in Palestine. I can't believe that's happening. We should be able to say that anytime we want, day or night. If you want to continue a beautiful city, state, country where you feel good about being an American, I think it's important to rethink this particular resolution. I deeply, deeply oppose it, and if you know Jewish Voices for Peace, they do too. And what they say about it, if you looked on their website, it is, only bold action will build safety for all our communities. Instead, our elected representatives are considering the controversial IHRA definition. Make no mistake, legislating the IHRA definition is not about Jewish safety. The only thing it secures is impunity for decades of violating international
Your
law
time's up,
and
ma'am.
trampling on Palestine human rights. Thank you.
Maria Cohen.
Hello. To start off with, Hag Purim Sameach and Ramadan Mubarak to all. Second of all, I am Jewish. I am from a Syrian Jewish community, an Arab Jewish community that has been discriminated against in the state of Israel and outside it. The International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism conflates criticism of the state of Israel with anti-Semitism or hatred of Jewish people. This language actually furthers anti-Semitism throughout the world because people who are critical of the state of Israel will believe, due to definitions like this, that all Jews stand for Israel, or Israel speaks for all Jews. And this furthers their hatred towards the Jewish people because they see a state acting in the name of all Jews and believe that that's true, because there is no space for discussion or dissent, and because any criticism of a country is conflated with hatred towards a people. Additionally, the state of Israel has historically marginalized and oppressed Arab, Ethiopian, Persian, and African, South African Jews, Indian Jews also. It has forcibly sterilized members of the Jewish community due to the color of their skin, and it continues to perpetrate an apartheid system in the state of Palestine. We don't want there to not be a definition of anti-Semitism. We don't want there to not be a resolution against anti-Semitism. We want anti-Semitism to be discussed, to be addressed, to be treated as a serious problem that it is. However, this definition does not do that. This definition harms our communities and proliferates hatred towards the Jewish people. In addition, there are so many Jews who speak out against the state of Israel's actions that to silence them would be causing more of a harm on our community than to be doing any good. In addition, sorry, I can hear my voice and it's very jarring. In addition, these definitions of anti-Semitism are stifling discussion in our communities and are stifling the possibility for understanding of the fact that there can be varied positions, that the Jewish community is not a monolith, and that fair, honest, in good faith criticism of the state of Israel and its policies and its actions in recent times and since its inception are not hatred of a community, they are criticism of a state. Every other state can be criticized in this country. I don't see a reason why the state of Israel should be an exception. Thank you.
Isabel Kay.
Thank you.
Pull that down, yeah, thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this issue. If I hadn't been here when your council rejected the proposition to allow El Cajon police to collaborate with ICE the second time, I would have been very surprised to see this on the agenda. Of course, at the third attempt, you did pass a resolution to allow your police, against state law, to collaborate with ICE. This is yet another step towards fascism, apparently currying favor of our deranged, self-proclaimed monarch. My forebears on my father's side were Czech Jews and were all killed at Buchenwald. I am not a practicing Jew, but I was raised by parents who insisted on respect for all people, valuing their perspectives and love for their contributions to our shared culture. I strongly suggest that you look more closely at this IHRA definition and seek other definitions of anti-Semitism. In the IHRA definition, 7 of the 11 examples of anti-Semitism are explicitly suppressing free speech and explicitly do not allow for criticism of Israel, which is clearly something that we in the U.S., as other people have said, should be able to do. And clearly, as I'm sorry, I was outside, so I think it was maybe Council Member Goebel who said he was raised with this idea that never again should be never again, not just for Jews, but for anyone. And as you must know, a genocide is being committed with U.S. military intelligence, military personnel on the ground, and military armaments to the tune of at least $18 billion this year alone to kill defenseless Palestinians. This is completely unacceptable, and your city should not be standing up, waving the Nazi flag, basically, and saying that you are, for Israel and against free speech. Thank you.
We have 9 more speakers, sir. And
Okay.
The next one is Shelley DeLeon.
Thank you, Mayor Wells. We met in October. Thank you so much for bringing this forward. I would like to say that I don't agree with so much that has already been said here today. But it is great that we live in America, a Judeo-Christian nation, where we can come forward and say what's on our heart. As I was preparing today, I thought of a quote that has guided my life, really, ever since I read it in my 30s. It's a quote by Margaret Atwood. She's a Canadian writer and poet. And the quote is, "War is what happens when language fails." The reason that this quote came to mind is because we are talking about language today. And language is important in community discourse. If we do not share in understanding the definition of a word, I can't even speak to you today. As far as I understand it, we are here to discuss a working definition from the IHRA's website. I read in its entirety all that they have to say about this working definition that has been posted at the U.S. State Department since 2010. This definition gives us structure and helps to provide guardrails to an intelligible conversation and in no way prevents dissent. Another quote that I came armed with today is from Dr. Daniel Amen, and he is a psychiatrist and brain disorder specialist here in Southern California with many clinics across the nation. A quote from him that has also spoke to me is, "Accurate thinking is more important than positive thinking." This is a brain specialist. It's important that we think clearly, articulately, that we know and understand what we're talking about. I will tell you today that I'm a born-again Christian, and I have a Jewish man living in my heart. I will fight for Israel until my death. God bless you.
Thank you.
Giovanna Adelson.
Good afternoon. I stand before you as a Jewish person and a member of Jewish Voice for Peace. It is my position and that of Jewish Voice for Peace that we oppose the proposed resolution of the city of El Cajon to adopt the highly controversial definition of anti-Semitism as put forth by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, IRA, which is problematic and should not be adopted for many reasons, not least of all because it conflates anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism, to be clear, is discrimination, targeted violence, and dehumanizing stereotypes directed at Jews because of our Jewish identity, and is a grave and increasing threat in these United States. Zionism, on the other hand, is a political ideology that asserts that Jews can only be saved in a Jewish supremacist nation state, Israel, that suppresses the rights of non-Jewish inhabitants of that same land. As an anti-Zionist Jew, I stand firm in my belief that Judaism compels me, as a Jew, to critique ethno-nationalism and the ongoing genocide of the Palestinian people at the hands of the State of Israel. The IRA definition of anti-Semitism conflates anti-Semitism with legitimate criticism of the Israeli state. Pro-Israel lobbying groups are pushing hard for universities, governments, and municipalities like this one to adopt the IRA's definition of anti-Semitism in order to suppress the free speech of those who support Palestinian human rights. This should worry anyone who supports freedom of expression, such as that enshrined in the U.S. Bill of Rights, and academic freedom. Furthermore, the IRA definition of anti-Semitism has little to do with real anti-Semitism, as it disproportionately focuses on the State of Israel and aims to quell any legitimate criticism of it, rather than on any real violence perpetrated against Jews, the majority of whom are not Israeli. The IRA's definition is also vague and confusing and fails to identify anti-Semitism as a form of prejudice or racism, which it is. Instead, it describes anti-Semitism as, quote, a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred. What even is that? To combat true anti-Semitism, we need clear and strong tools. The IRA's definition is anything but that and makes Jews and Palestinians more vulnerable, not less so. It makes Jews more vulnerable by conflating real anti-Semitism with criticism of Israel, and it makes Palestinians more vulnerable by threatening their very legitimate fight for human rights. It is essential, therefore, to stop weaponizing real anti-Semitism and the repression of Palestinian solidarity. We therefore request, as myself and Jewish Voice for Peace, that the City Council reject the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. Thank you.
Thank you.
Spencer Levine.
Hello, council members. My name is Spencer. I'm a member of Jewish Voice for Peace. I am Jewish and a lifelong member of San Diego. I agree with what Giovanna, what Jamal, what Maria, what Doris have said previously about the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. I just want to give you some personal experience of mine with my own family and why I believe that my free speech as a Jew should not be deemed anti-Semitic. in any part in the city. Right after October 7th happened, I started posting things on social media from Amnesty International, which I've been following since I was 13 years old, after learning about the Holocaust, after learning about the Armenian genocide, that I didn't want people to be indiscriminately bombed by Israel. And my half-sister messaged back that she wanted to starve and dehydrate everybody in Gaza because they deserved it. And I was horrified by this statement. I don't know why you would want to starve and dehydrate an entire group of people based on their ethnicity or their statehood. I think that's incorrect to do. I think that's discriminatory. Just as you said, you don't want discriminatory things to be done against Jewish people. Months later, my uncle was speaking outside on the phone with an acquaintance of his, and they were talking about the genocide happening, and he said the solution was to kill everyone in the area. And he was referring to Lebanese people, Palestinian people, Syrian people. Was he talking about 6 million people, 9 million people? I don't know. He was being extremely vague. But where did these talking points come from about dehydrating people, starving people, bombing indiscriminately, people killing everybody in the area? They come from the government. And free speech is about voicing your opinion about what you want government policy to be. If you adopt this definition that says you can't go against Zionism and the current government of Israel, you're saying that we don't have the power to voice our opinion about what policy should be. And I think that's the worst thing you could do in this country to honor the First Amendment. It just doesn't make any sense. Thank you for your time.
Julianne Gustafson.
Thank you very much for allowing me to voice my opinion. My name is Julianne Gustafson Lira. I've been working for human rights or with human rights for probably about 40 years. Different peoples, different times. But it wasn't until 1983, 1984, 1982-83, when I paid attention to what happened in the two villages in Lebanon called Sabra and Shatila. That was when, with the help of the United States, the Phalange in Lebanon, and the help of the Israeli military, went and bulldozed and killed over 1,500 people there. That's when I started paying attention. Okay, since then, I have been working tirelessly for Palestinian human rights. In 2009, I went to Gaza myself to see what had happened. I went with Code Pink, and we were a delegation of 50 women and about 7 men. And when I got back, all I can tell you is that I was afraid to speak. I could not speak for 3 weeks. People would ask me, how did it go? I couldn't tell them. I did not see blood. What I saw was what you see today, if you care to look at international media, not our media, okay? Not CNN, Fox, NBC, whoever. No, you're not going to get that there. You're going to get it with international media. And then you see the destruction and all of the children getting killed. Okay? So that when I went, it was like 5 weeks after they had gone there while we were enjoying Christmas and New Year's. 2008, 2009, they killed over 1,500 people. This is a Zionist organization. Now, to conflate anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism is wrong, okay? Anti-Semitism is anti-Semitism is going against and persecuting Palestinians, Middle Eastern peoples, and Jews. Zionism is a political construct, and we should all be against anti-Zionism. So how can anybody tell me that I can deny what I saw, what I am seeing now, what everybody else in the world is seeing, all this terrible genocide. We have a perfect right to be able to say
Thank you, ma'am.
that we're against anti-Zionism.
Excuse me, ma'am. Council member has a question.
Question for you.
Yes.
What news outlets do you recommend?
What do we recommend?
News outlets.
I'm sorry, what news outlets? Well, you can try Deutsche Welle. You could try Al Jazeera. You could try the different organizations that are on YouTube. You could try. Let's see, what's the other one? It's Katie Halpern. You can try. What's the other one?
BBC.
I'm sorry?
BBC?
No, not the BBC as well. They're just another voice of what we see.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next speaker is Summer Ismail.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Summer Ismail. I work with the Council of American Islamic Relations, and I represent Muslims all throughout San Diego County. And to answer your question, actually, I recommend also reading Israeli newspapers because they cover things a lot better and say things that we are not allowed to say here in the United States. In fact, I don't know if you guys are aware that there are some BDS laws in states like Arkansas, which made it all the way up to the Supreme Court, because you are not allowed to boycott the state of Israel in different states in the United States. And of course, people took issue because I can boycott the United States openly, but you're not allowed to boycott Israel in certain states. And they're taking it all the way up to the Supreme Court. America is all about free speech, that we should be able to openly boycott the same way what America was founded on, no taxation without representation. That should be allowed here. We should be able to openly boycott and criticize things like has been mentioned so many times. Israel is deemed an illegal apartheid state by multiple human rights groups. And also, I wanted to read an excerpt of what is said in the IRA things, is that by claiming that the existence of a state of Israel is a racist endeavor is a form of anti-Semitism, according to the IRA definition. That shouldn't be allowed. I should be able to say, hey, bombing children indiscriminately is racist, especially when they all align in one group. But also, I know that this resolution was probably well-intended, Mr. Wells, and I would love to work with you on creating an anti-Semitism resolution with Jewish Voice for Peace and other community-based organizations to address that and anti-Muslim hatred, because out of all the Muslim university students, we conducted a survey, and 1 in 2 Muslim students face severe Islamophobia on campus. It's real. Both of these things have heightened since October. So let's work on a resolution that addresses both those issues. I also wanted to talk as someone who is very engaged in San Diego politics. I just saw that there was a $9 million budget cut to San Diego Unified School District, which slashes summer schools, and that concerns me. I think we should have access to those, but on the same token, we are sending annually to Israel $87 million of our tax dollars. And I should be able to openly speak, and I'm glad that I have that ability here in the state of California. But in other states and other things, it could be deemed as anti-Semitism. And I worry for that. And I would love, love, love to work with you guys and really strive towards making El Cajon and upkeep the beauty of it and celebrate all people and protect all people through a well-meaning, well-intended resolution. Thank you.
Guinevere Jones.
Hi, my name is Guinevere Jones, and I urge you to vote no on this resolution. It is an attempt to silence, scare, and assist in genocidal deportation violence against pro-Palestine activists. You all pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America while simultaneously sitting here and trying to crush your fellows' First Amendment rights to protest against a systematic and calculated genocide of Palestinian people. This is a disgusting revolution in order to perpetuate a lie that criticizing the violent state of Israel is the same as criticizing Jewishness. We cannot sit by and watch such blatant cooperation and aid of DHS, ICE, and the police in criminalizing pro-Palestinian activists. Don't use anti-Semitism as a vessel for your hate for Muslims. The real anti-Semitism is coming from inside the house, not from pro-Palestine activists. Thank you.
Liat?
Thank you, council members and Mayor Wells. It is an honor to be here today. I am Liat Cohen-Reese, the director of the Anti-Semitism Task Force at Stand With Us, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization devoted to combating anti-Semitism and misinformation about Israel and the Jewish people. I also invite you all to come to Israel. We will take you there, pay it on us, to see this so-called apartheid and to see firsthand what Israel is really like and how integrated the Palestinians are. It is important to first note that IRA does not limit free speech whatsoever. You all have the language. You see it. It says that criticism of Israel is not considered anti-Semitism. So let's stick to the facts. JVP recently voiced their goals at a Senate Judiciary meeting under the guise of combating anti-Semitism and protecting free speech. Basically, what they really want to be able to say is, I don't hate Jews, I just hate Israel, and to block the IRA definition that equates anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. We also know that JVP recently agreed to pay $677,000 to the federal government as part of a settlement to resolve allegations of fraud related to their application for COVID relief funds. JVP positions itself as a Jewish organization, but surveys show that approximately 95% of American Jews consider Israel an essential part of their Jewish identity, indicating strong support for Zionism. This is a non-representative segment of the broader Jewish community in the U.S. IRA codifies a definition for anti-Semitism for the purpose of helping government officials like yourselves be able to better identify anti-Semitic motives, criminal activity, and unlawful discrimination. It also serves to provide the government with a definition to train government employees in the future on how to better respond to anti-Semitic discrimination. Why do we need this definition now? There is an anti-Semitism crisis surging throughout America. Jews comprise approximately 2.4% of the American population, and they manage to suffer more than 60% of religiously motivated hate crimes. More severely, in a recent survey, 50% of Americans didn't even know what anti-Semitism was. Today, we seek to incorporate the International Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism as adopted in the USA. It has been adopted by more than 95% of all major Jewish organizations. It's been adopted by 1,100 entities worldwide, 43 countries, 37 U.S. states, and almost 100 U.S. cities, and even the Global Imams Council. I want to thank the great city of El Cajon for preparing a resolution to establish IRA and for leading the way to bring it to other cities in our great county of San Diego. Thank you.
Os Laniado.
Mayor, City Council, thank you so much for having us today and raising this proposal for the resolution. We have to differentiate between two things: freedom of speech and supporting terrorism. That's a completely two different things. During the Holocaust, there was also Jews that collaborates with the Nazis. The names were couples. You had mentioned before, 95 of the Jews in America identify themselves as Zionists with the support of a Jewish homeland, the State of Israel. Many people here repeating the same lie that they think they don't let the facts to confuse them. And I'm sorry about my accent that I sound like Borat, but I will say it straightforward. The vast majority, 95% of the Jews, identify themselves as Zionists. These fractions that coming and standing up here and identify as Jews and speaking on behalf of the Jewish people, not representing anything, just themselves. Thank you very much.
We have two more speaker cards. Stacy Wax.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. My name is Stacy Wax. I'm a third-generation San Diegan. I'm a mother. I have 4 children. I was born and raised here, as I said. I went to high school here. I have strong roots in this community. I stand before you today to speak about a pressing issue, anti-Semitism, an ancient hatred that is adapted to modern times, manifesting in ways both overt and subtle. It is our responsibility to confront it with clarity, consistency, and with courage. That is why we must adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, because fighting hatred requires defining it. And first and foremost, I think it needs to be said that Jewish Voices for Palestine, which most of these people have been a part of that spoke today, they do not speak for the majority of Jews. Because of their stance on Israel and Zionism, it's highly controversial within the Jewish community. Mainstream media Jewish organizations, including the ADL and the AJC, do not consider it a representation of the broader Jewish population. Understanding that we have a need for a clear definition, anti-Semitism is not just a relic of history. It is a present and growing threat. In recent years, we've seen violent attacks on synagogues, college campuses, anti-Semitic conspiracy theories spread online, and Jewish individuals, including my own children on college campuses, harassed simply for wearing a kippah or a Star of David. Yet too often when Jews call out anti-Semitism, they are dismissed or told their concerns are exaggerated. How can we fight something that we refuse to properly define? The IRA working definition provides that much-needed clarity. Some critics argue that adopting the IRA definition stifles free speech. This is false. The definition explicitly states that criticism of Israel, similar to that leveled against any other country, cannot be regarded as anti-Semitic. Holding Israel accountable, debating its policies, and advocating for peace, all of these remain protected under free speech. However, when that criticism crosses the line into denying Israel's right to exist, comparing Israel to Nazi Germany, or holding Jews collectively responsible for Israel's actions, it becomes anti-Semitism. That distinction matters. So today, I urge you, let us commit to naming anti-Semitism what we see it, as we see it. Let us stand together in the fight against hate. Let us adopt the IRA definition, make it clear that anti-Semitism, no matter how it disguises itself, has no place in our society.
The last speaker is Stephanie Cajon.
Good day, council members. Thank you for this opportunity, as well as all the people who have spoken here today. My family has, members of my family have lived in El Cajon for 4 decades. And also, I want to celebrate the people who have been here for much less than that and are speaking up in part of this democratic process. From the few comments that I've heard since I've arrived, I want to say that there's much of what is being said on both sides that I know is very sincere and heartfelt and important. And so I'm not going to argue the value. I'm here to oppose this agenda item, and I'm not going to argue its value or its pros and its cons, but I want to make a couple points about the larger, broader political situation. So first of all, though we do tend to have a majority rule system here when it's working, we also have protections for the minority. So to say that even if it's only 5% of those polled who have responded that among the Jewish community that feel the way that they have spoken today, that is still a significant number of people, and we have to honor their voices. They're not speaking for themselves. They are a community within a community. The other point I want to make is, why is this happening now? Agreed, there is a rise in anti-Semitism right now, as we are also seeing a rise in anti-women actions and rhetoric and policies, and anti-Arab and Muslim actions and policies. So there's an overall crisis of hate and discrimination in our country, and I'm sure that El Cajon has an anti-discrimination policy already that covers all the groups. So we know how the calls of anti-Semitism are being used right now. They're being used to attack free speech. They're being used to expel students who have exercised their free speech legally and peacefully. They're being used to fire people. And most recently this week, there was a high-profile representative of the the pro-Palestinian movement, who was arrested, held incognito. He's a legal resident with a green card and a citizen wife, and he was actually transported out of state without anybody knowing where he was. I'm sure you've seen that in the news. So we know this is happening. So I'm saying to you, why are you stirring up this hornet's nest in a community that you know doesn't have consensus on this issue? It doesn't have consensus on the immigration issue, and yet you're stirring that one up as well. And I'd say it's suspect based on what's going on in Washington. If we really care about our local community, we will recognize that our local laws already are adequate for dealing with these issues, and we'll work to build community rather than divide it. Thank you.
No more cards.
Okay, thanks. So it comes back to the council. What we're asking for is to give direction to Graham to come back with a resolution that we can vote on. We have to vote on it again in 2 weeks. So any discussion? Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, here we go. So, if you bring in the IRA, you bring in a political agenda. If you take out all reference to IRA as that, I think that if you take out IRA, so let me refresh that. I think that if you leave IRA in, it kind of unintentionally gives permission to others to create chaos and hatred towards those towards groups that are seen as a threat to the Jewish nation. That it's their opinion. So my opinion is, if you leave IRA in there, that other groups are going to see it as a sort of a free-for-all. And that was just sort of thoughts that I had written down. Anyway, let me go back to the beginning here. Since when do we need to respond and write resolutions, letters, ordinances to federal issues? That's my question. Why? We haven't had any anti-Semitic problems here since 2004, and that's per the Anti-Defamation League. So do we have an answer to that? Why we're bringing that up now?
I'll respond to you when you're finished. When you're finished.
Okay. So that was my first question. Second of all, where is or who does the Anti-Semitism Task Force of San Diego? What organization is this part of? Because I couldn't find, I did some research on that, and I couldn't find the Anti-Semitism Task Force of San Diego. The second thing, or the next thing is, social media posts on the surface seem like a no-brainer. Who would be against anti-Semitism? Nobody. No one's going to be against anti-Semitism. So why are we bringing it up? but we're bringing it up to stir up chaos. This is another resolution to bring up more chaos and to bring up more dissension. I think that this was a political stunt using Gary Kendrick's family history to bring in sentiment. With all due respect, Mr. Mayor, you didn't have to bring in Gary's family to bring in. This is, if the federal government had
Are you saying that
heard-
Gary's not adult enough to make his own decision?
Oh, absolutely he is.
Then
But
why are you blaming me for Gary's decision?
I think that you used Gary's story and you pandered to his story and his family.
When did I pander? When did I bring up his story? He brought up his story.
If you let me finish.
Well, I just wonder why you're blaming me for a story that Gary told. I think what I'm saying is, if you have criticism about Gary, going through me is the wrong way to do it.
I don't have criticism of Gary.
Okay, so you're mad at me because of what Gary said.
No. I'm mad at you for going to Gary and using his story, knowing that he wants to get his story out, knowing that he is going to have a heart for this, knowing that you are using this as a political step. If the federal government, if you had never brought any of this up, the federal government most likely will never know where El Cajon is. Tom Homan would know where El Cajon is, but the federal government, on the whole, probably would never know where El Cajon is.
I'm not sure what your point is.
My point is that you're bringing chaos and divisiveness into El Cajon. These past two resolutions have nothing to do with El Cajon in themselves. I want to read a letter here that I received from the Jewish Voices for Peace. As an organization advocating for justice and equity, we are firm in opposing all forms of racism, including but not limited to anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Asian racism, and xenophobia. We work closely with the Jewish community, and anti-Semitism is a serious problem. But the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism fails to address the real threats to Jewish safety. Our main concern with this resolution is its reliance on the IHRA definition, which wrongfully conflates anti-Semitism with critique of Israel. This is a serious issue because it infringes on our democratic rights to free speech. As part of our First Amendment rights, we have the right to be critical of any country's policies, including those of the United States. Now, the rest of this letter is similar to what was written before. My question is, and I have contacted Matthew Brown of the Anti-Defamation League, and my bottom line is I would like to have this resolution tabled until after April so that we as a council can sit down with the community, since this is a big issue, to sit down and look over the 11 different points of the IHRA to actually discuss this. This was put forth to us on a Friday. We are voting on it on a Tuesday. This is a national issue, not an El Cajon issue. We've got homelessness. We've got housing issues. We've got a lot more bigger issues in El Cajon than anti-Semitism. We haven't had any anti-Semitism issues since 2024. This is not a pressing issue. Is this not something that the community could sit down and talk about with the Majdal Center and some of the Palestinian groups, church groups? Let them all get together and talk about this. If we want to bring this up and have a community that is united, instead of having to bring up a federal issue that we have nothing to do with. Why not table it and wait until the reports come out from the Anti-Defamation League, which is the third week in April? And that's my suggestion. Let's table it.
Anybody else want to speak? Gary, do you want to speak?
I'm okay with tabling it. It's always good to have more information. I just want to make sure that there's no limitation on the free speech. You know, what's free speech and what's hate speech. And Michelle makes a good point. We got this on Friday, and this is pretty important. I think that we have to be careful on resolutions because sometimes we're getting to areas that maybe we shouldn't be in. So let's get some more information on this and get maybe all the groups involved, because I heard some pretty good testimony today, and I would like to talk with people from all sides. And there's a very complicated issue.
Okay. Well, I'd be opposed to that. Let me tell you a couple of things. Where do I start? Let's talk about Israel being an apartheid state. There are 2.1 million Arabs in Israel. There are 9 Jews in Syria. There are less than 100 Jews in Saudi Arabia. There are less than 100 Jews in Lebanon. Who's really performing the genocide? Who's an apartheid state? Is it Israel? Israel that has Arabic members in their Knesset, in their Supreme Court. But what really brought me here today was not that. What brought me here today was the fact that anti-Jewish sentiment, hate crimes, reported hate crimes in America have gone up 360% since October 7th. And Michelle says we haven't had a problem in El Cajon, yet we had a Jewish doctor murdered less than a year ago. So if that's not a problem, I don't know what we're talking about. As for Jewish Voices for Palestine, I did look into them, and what I read was that they are a hardcore leftist Marxist group that is a danger to America. And I don't want to listen to them. What I heard today was no different than what you would hear in the Jim Crow South if the KKK came and made their argument for why they should be continued to allow to harass and murder black Americans. Because they wanted to. And they would confound it and say it was against my First Amendment rights. We talked a lot about this Palestinian protester who's being deported. Well, he's being deported because he's not an American citizen, so he doesn't have the rights that American citizens have, and he is supporting a terrorist organization. Hamas is a terrorist organization, designated so by the U.S. State Department in 1997. So you're telling me that we want to not have a definition of anti-Semitism that protects people from being murdered like they have been throughout millennia, from the Greeks to the Romans to the Persians, to all of Europe, to the entire Middle East. We can't stand up and say it's wrong to murder and harass these people. You know, I gave a speech a week ago when I was talking about why you thought it was wrong that when you arrest somebody committing a crime, that we would let ICE know that a criminal was in our midst and they could take that person away. And my question to everybody was, if you're against that, what is wrong with you? Why do you want criminals in your midst? If you're against having a resolution that says it's wrong to persecute Jewish people on campuses, to make people feel afraid, to not protect people who are being murdered, to not protect people whose hate crimes have gone up 360%, what is wrong with you? This is nothing against people in the Middle East. This is nothing against Islamic people. This is just saying we as Americans are better than this. We don't want to support the harassment and the murder of a group of people that has been harassed and murdered there throughout human history. So I understand that some of you may want to wait and drag this process out, but I don't. And so I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we send back to staff the resolution from the IHRA and come back with a resolution that we can vote on. Is there a second on that?
Can I make a comment really quickly?
Sure.
With your permission, I hope everybody here read HolocaustRemembrance.com, IHRA's full definition. This was in our packets, and I really hope everyone read it and is able to convey the specific areas that they have problems with. On their website, the working, non-legally binding definition says anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed towards Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. That's the working definition. I don't see anything in there regarding Israel. They go into a couple of paragraphs. One line down from that, it says, criticism of Israel similar to that levied against any other country cannot be regarded as anti-Semitic. One of the last points on there says, anti-Semitism is holding Jews collectively responsible for the actions of the state of Israel. That's anti-Semitism, saying all Jews are responsible for the actions of the government of Israel. I'm confused as to, and so I don't want freedom. I don't want there to be any situation where you can't criticize a government. That is awful. I would stand firmly against that. I criticize my government, and both political parties frequently. That is the American way. So I'm not, and I don't think anything in here is going to, I know nothing in here is going to stifle any kind of freedom of speech. And it says here, nothing here is saying you can't criticize the nation of Israel. I'm reading right here. And if it is, I'd be firmly against it, because governments, there have been more killings by government than any other organization in the history of the world. And so, I mean, there's only one other mention of Israel in this. So it seems like this resolution is focused on Jewish people. The IHRA definition clearly says it's focused on people of Jewish descent. So I would ask my colleagues, what part of the language do you disagree with about the IHRA's definition? Because it seems to me pretty benign with regard to controversy. I mean, this doesn't look like it's going to be. If there's someone, okay, let's paint a picture of in practice. If we adopt this resolution, and there's a city employee, Parks and Rec, and they post on social media how terrible all the children that have been killed in Palestine, no one's getting fired from the city of El Cajon. No one's going to be not up for a promotion. No police officer is going to be demoted. It seems like we're bringing in other things, other topics with regard to what we're actually trying to accomplish here. So that's my opinion.
All right, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I would.
There's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Motion. Oh, of course. I thought you didn't want to.
Well, I think Mr. Ortiz brings up good points. I think you can be anti-Zionist and not anti-Semitic. Anti-Zionist is you're criticizing the political activities, the government activities of a state, whereas anti-Semitic is, as the definition says, a hatred towards somebody. That's different than I disagree with bombing or how you work. Your character is different than your actions. In that sense, is different. I'm with Councilmember Mitchell in saying, I think this opens up a Pandora box. You should expect once we fly one flag, we will have to fly many flags. But nonetheless, I agree with the resolution that hatred towards anybody, but in this case, Jews, is wrong. And expressing his hatred for being something you really, in some senses, can't control, but you can be Jewish, I suppose, without living in Israel, is what I'm trying to say. I think it's wrong. There's a difference between criticism, where criticism ends and harassment begins. Mm-hmm. Criticism can be of Zionism. Harassment is anti-Semitic. And there is a line that it crosses there. And once it crosses into harassment, that's wrong. So in that sense, I support the resolution. I think we've opened up a Pandora's box, but in this case, I support the resolution.
Mr. Kendrick, Bill, is your motion including Councilmember Kendrick's addition that he's mentioned in the beginning of this? Okay. That includes all immigrants?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
And just to be clear, I would be happy to support any marginalized group that is being murdered or harassed. I don't have a problem with that. I think we should always stand up for people who are being harassed and murdered.
So you're not, you wouldn't consider passing, I would consider passing this motion if we took out the INRA.
No, I would not consider that.
Okay.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor and a second. Can you please vote?
Motion carries by a 4-1 vote with Councilmember Mitchell voting no.
Thank you very much. Now,
so Council, what I understand is I have some direction to take the sample resolution and bring it back for Council consideration. As a caveat, Council's put staff in a precarious position because I'm trying to now read everybody's minds. I heard comments about freedom of speech. I heard Mr. Kendrick's comments about other marginalized groups. I'm probably going to just, remove reference to the European Council and European Parliament because I don't know if that's really true. And to be honest, I don't have the time to research the history of that. So I'll probably remove some things out of the resolution that doesn't make sense to me for the City Council to opine on. So what I'll do is I will provide like I did last time, a strikeout version of this so you can see exactly what changes were made, what additions were made, and then council can provide input if other changes you want to make at that council meeting when we bring that back, if that's okay with the council.
That's fine with me. Is that fine with everybody? All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Our last item 13, is a report from Councilmember Goebel and myself, and I'll leave it to Mr. Goebel. I've spoken enough, I think, today. It's okay.
Last month, the council passed a resolution for the sole purpose of protecting its residents from known criminal aliens. Since then, data has been presented that there are many convicted criminals of serious and violent crimes living in El Cajon illegally. In addition, there are as many as 52 unaccompanied minors not subject to deportation reportedly living with their sponsors in El Cajon. Often these sponsors are supportive family members such as aunts, uncles, grandparents, but unfortunately not every child has this kind of support. Federal law enforcement officials are working on both removing convicted criminals here in El Cajon as well as ensuring the safety of these unaccompanied minors. However, SB 54 creates a roadblock for us to assist in something as simple as a welfare check for these children, leaving that task to the federal authorities as they have resources and time permits. Congressman Gabe Evans of Colorado has introduced H.R. 1680, which would free local law enforcement from restrictions of working with federal law enforcement to get dangerous criminals out of El Cajon, and ensuring the safety of immigrant children who are unaccompanied minors. ICE has been quoted as saying, the people of this law SB 54 protects the most are the criminal aliens. To be clear, ICE neither expects nor wants local law enforcement agencies to participate in immigration enforcement in the community, end quote. They do hope one day again that we can work alongside each other to protect the public safety in every city. This agenda item is to send a letter of support for Congressman Evans' bill so that El Cajon could have every tool to remove convicted criminal aliens in our city while more speedily ensuring the safety of unaccompanied immigrant minors in our city. We need to be able to keep our kids safe. We need to do something as simple as a welfare check and not have SB 54 handcuff us. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me see if there's any speaker cards first before we come back to council.
Yes, sir. We have two. The first one is from Rebecca Brandstetter.
Hello, Rebecca. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I agree. We need to be able to do welfare checks on children. That said, as a recent arrival of California, I continue to be grateful that my family settled in the interesting, diverse, and vibrant city of El Cajon. But there's a phrase from my childhood back home that this agenda item calls to mind, because as of 3:30 today, H.R. 1680 is a pig in a poke. I've seen too many bills at the state and federal levels with names that imply one thing, but with language that mandates or encourages another thing altogether. I know you've seen it too. There's no text with this bill on the congressional website. And if we can't read and understand the text of the bill, we cannot truly know what the council is asking in our names of Congressman Issa. Especially because immigration has become such a volatile and divisive topic in our city, I respectfully ask that you table this item and delay the letter until the text becomes available for council and especially for the city's residents to examine and consider it. I believe it would be in everyone's best interest for Congressman Issa to be able to keep his powder dry until we have a solid target. We are blessed to have a dedicated, brave, skilled, and compassionate police department in El Cajon. They make me proud and humbled by their selfless service to this city and its residents. And this council obviously feels the same, not only through the words that you speak from this dais, but through the strong support you give to El Cajon Police Department at every opportunity. There can be no doubt that El Cajon is a law and order city. But authorizing this letter at this time is in the wrong order until we know what the law will be. Thank you for your faithful service to this city and your consideration.
Thank you, ma'am.
The last speaker is Stephanie Cajon.
Hello. So I am also speaking in opposition to this agenda item. I find it highly suspect, again, in the current political environment, and I just heard our Mayor Bill Wells saying that you support marginalized communities who feel harassed in this city. Well, they've come out in large numbers to tell you they feel harassed by the attacks on SB 54, which is still the California state law, and yet you're doing this again. So what I question then is this law and order city has been out of compliance with state law since 2017 when SB 54 was passed. There are 14 items that you were supposed to direct the police to have a written policy for those items, and there are only 6 written policies for that compliance with 54. So that leaves us with 8. And it's compared with other cities and institutions. In the Sheriff's is 100% compliant, at least on paper. Escondido, National City, Chula Vista. La Mesa is missing 3, but El Cajon is missing 8. So if you're really truly concerned about the most vulnerable populations who feel marginalized and harassed, instead of doing yet another symbolic letter that doesn't need to be done, isn't going to make any difference today except to your political career, I would ask you, and I don't suspect you will, but I would ask the rest of you who have shown that you do have a spine, that you do have a consciousness, and that you do listen. I really respect you for how you have responded to the community and understand the undue pressure that has been brought upon you. But I would ask you to oppose this. Again, it's a tempest in a teapot. It's a battle we don't need to have. And by rejecting it, you will once again let the immigrant community in San Diego know that you are here to represent them, not the political stuff that's going in El Cajon. And if I haven't ran out of, okay, I got 53 more seconds. I would like to say that I truly, see, Mayor Wells, you've been very explicit as to what your political affiliations and intentions are. And I want to say that I think we're very close to the rest of you. I think we're very close to a turning point. People are going to start seeing that their Social Security is being delayed even more than it was in the past, and that they're not going to be able to, we go to the post office and they have to close when we don't expect them to be closed because they're not staffed well enough. And the VA benefits won't be coming on time, et cetera, their Medicare. You won't be able to schedule a national parks. So basically I want to say the tide is going to turn. And the communities that are supporting you now are going to stop supporting you, and we'll be ready to support those of you who have shown integrity. Thank you.
Any more?
No other speakers.
All right. It's back to the council for discussion. Yes, Gary.
Well, I'm very reluctant to support something that there's no text on. It's like a blank check. We don't know what they're going to do. In fact, we have a congressperson from the same state that says that the wildfires were caused by Jewish space lasers. So who knows what they're going to come up with next? And there's SB 54 actually, when President Trump in his last term had the Justice Department sue the state about that in federal court, the federal court ruled in favor of the state in SB 54, and that's the law of the land right now. This last resolution that was passed over mine and Michelle's objections has caused a lot of divisiveness in this community. People are just scared to death. And there were people out there crying outside. I just can't support a resolution that endorses a policy that hasn't even been written yet. And there's another issue that I think is very relevant to this agenda item, is that the City Council just today received a letter saying that the federal government would not indemnify our cops in case of conflict with state law. And I know that's something that was very important to my fellow council member, Mr. Goebel. I think we need to protect our police. So what I'd suggest is we go to a private insurance company and get a $10 million policy to protect our individual police officers in case this, to protect them. I want to protect our police officers. They're out there day and night protecting us, and sometimes a very difficult and thankless job, so I do want to thank them all because I know they work very hard. I don't want to go into further conflict with the state law. I don't want to essentially send this congressman from Colorado a blank check because we don't know what's going to say. What if they say everyone who isn't blonde-haired and blue-eyed needs to be rounded up? Everybody that has brown skin needs to be stopped by the police and asked for immigration identification. That's not what America is about, and that's not what I believe El Cajon is about. I think we need to protect all of our minorities as much as we can. We have 70 different ethnic groups in El Cajon. And we don't need them to worry anymore, stay awake at night and not send their kids to school and not go to their jobs. And I know over the former Foodland, they had a raid there and arrested a whole bunch of their employees, people that are working, trying to support their family, just like we all want to do. So I can't support this.
Go ahead. I recognize the text isn't there yet. This is a chance to be able to weigh in and craft the text as well by perhaps working with this congressman. And in other instances, you can pull that support once you see something. It might be a little bit of a reach to say that the text might have people who have blonde hair or brown skin. That probably is not what's going to happen. But certainly at a future date, we could say, you know what? We had a chance to get in early and craft the text to things that we think that we see in California that he might not see in Colorado. And if it comes out that we don't like the outcome, we can always change our mind and write a letter of changing our mind. The intent here is for the sole purpose of let me back up. In my discussions with those that I know in federal law enforcement, they will not ask our police to do anything that will jeopardize their credentials under SB 54. I'll say that again. The federal law enforcement will not ask our local police to do anything that will jeopardize their standing and their credentials to be a police officer in California. At the same time, we have up to 52 unaccompanied minors in El Cajon that are not quite as high on the priority list as them getting some of these criminals out of our communities. I just want to go check on those 52 kids and make sure they're okay. I have no interest in asking anybody's immigration status. I have no interest in what school they're attending. I just want to know, are you okay? Are you with your sponsor? Are you doing what everybody said you would do? And we can check the box and we're out of there. We can't do that because the feds realize that will create a quandary for our police officers. So absolutely, SB 54 is the law of the land. The feds know it. The state knows it. Our police know it. It is the law of the land. I'm just trying to say, when it comes to people living here illegally who are convicted criminals and unaccompanied minors, that we have to make sure they're not being trafficked, can't we just make sure they're all okay, the kids, and get rid of the bad guys? I don't care about anybody else's immigration status. Out of my jurisdiction. Not an issue. Mine is public safety for the people in El Cajon.
Mr. Goebel, I agree. I'm not going to have any problem with that. But I don't see that in here. I see that you want to send a letter to support a bill that we have no text on. That's what I see on here. I don't see that this is what you're trying to do. If you want to send a letter to support this congressman, great. Send a letter on your own letterhead saying, hey, I support your bill whenever you get it written. That's great. I watched his YouTube video, and in his YouTube video, he talks about the getting it out and uncuffing the police and getting rid of all the illegal aliens. He kind of slid that in there really quick. But he does talk about getting rid of violent criminals and getting rid of all illegal aliens. And that's kind of been the issue that we've had here in this chamber about SB 54. SB 54 was supposed to be for violent criminals, which we all agree is a bad thing, right? Everybody says we don't want violent criminals. But when you start saying, let's round up all illegal aliens, that's where we have the issue with.
And that's what he says in his video. Yeah, we're going to get rid of all, violent criminals and illegal aliens. So I don't have a problem with writing a letter. I don't want to be on that letter until I know what I'm writing about. That's my deal. But to your point of checking up on kids, absolutely. But where is that on here? What does that have to do with writing a letter to support this congressman's? I mean, I appreciate your compassion on this. I do. I want to know where these kids are. And if we've got upwards of 50 kids in our city, which I, in fact, did not know about until I started asking questions, because we're not being told this information, and yet we have to decide and make decisions on resolutions that affect these kids. So, yes, I want to find out where these kids are, too. But where is that? I'm looking here on the support for H.R. 1680, and I don't see where that is on here. Did I miss it?
It's in the second paragraph of the sample letter. At the same time, we are hoping this law will also allow local law enforcement to work with the same federal agency to locate and ensure the safety of nearly 300,000 minors who enter the country unaccompanied. As many as 52 may be living within our city.
Okay, so again, I don't have a problem. I see that now, my mistake. I don't have a problem with writing this letter. If that's what you want to do, that's great. I just don't want to put my name on something that's going to a congressman who hasn't even written his bill yet. It's not going. If you want to do it later, that's great, but I can't support this.
I think it's a good idea to do welfare checks on those probably 52 kids that are living here. Maybe we could just write a letter to our congressman and some of our representatives in the state government saying, why don't you carve out something from SB 54 that allows us to do welfare checks on these kids to make sure that they're safe. And that's it. I think that's all we need. Because I want to make sure these kids are safe. That's important to me. But, a lot of our immigrants are already really terrified, and they're not sending their kids to school. And they should feel comfortable doing that.
May I? There is no text, but the bill seeks to reform, I'm going to read, seeks to amend the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996. That's what the bill is reforming. And I hope my colleagues read and know what this is, what that text is saying. The text further, the information further goes on to say it would allow law enforcement to work with federal counterparts to detain criminal illegal immigrants. It would create a path for justice for people harmed by sanctuary policies by allowing them to go to the justice system against a state or city who refuse to honor an immigration detainer request that later commits a crime that they are a victim of. And it goes on to say a bunch of other things. So it's not like we don't have any guidance or information, carte blanche. That's not what this is. And I am going to continue speaking out against SB 54. I'm not going to stop speaking out against SB 54. I do not believe it is a moral law that if someone commits arson, burglary, battery, all these other crimes are not included in SB 54. And we had people giving us information of crimes that are going on in our city, criticizing us, saying, why aren't you focused on these crimes? All of the crimes listed on that piece of paper that was handed to us were crimes that are not covered by SB 54. And I just refuse to believe that it is moral, it is not moral, to give a free pass to all of these different crimes It is immoral. We are creating victims. It is an immoral law, and it is unjust. And I know everybody on this council does not believe that those crimes should be passed up. So I refuse to accept SB 54 as a solution. Oh, we already have SB 54. Oh, we have SB 54. Those are for violent, heinous crimes. But all those other crimes that I've listed and a litany more are not included. So I'll vote yes on this.
Somebody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please vote.
Motion carries by a 3-2 vote, with council members Kendrick and Metschel voting no.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
can I make a statement to correct the record?
Yes, please.
It was said earlier that the City of El Cajon does not comply with SB 54. That is an organization that does a scorecard. How their criteria is developed, I can't attest to that, but we do comply with SB 54.
Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. There are no general information items on today's agenda. Item 14 is the introduction of an ordinance to prohibit the sale of vaping devices disguised as other products. Staff, will you please tell us about this?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this is an item that we brought forward, I think twice now. One, very intro, and then we took a stab at drafting some ideas of what the policy should look like. This is bringing that forward. What it says is that if an organization or a business is selling devices that are used for vaping or electronic smoking that are disguised as a different type of a device, like a hoodie, a pen, a USB drive, then that would be in violation of our code. There are, like any violation of our code, there is a due process, so they'd have the ability to appeal, but the ultimate penalties would be a combination of losing their tobacco retail license and fines. So that's the resolution, and it's ready for introduction.
Okay, then. Any speaker cards on this item?
No card, sir.
All right. Leave it to council. Gary, this is your baby, right?
Yeah.
What, do you want to say anything about it? Or?
Oh, I received letters from each one of the local school districts asking us to do something. We've got kids that are using cannabis from fake watches and fake, hoodies that have hidden vaping devices in them. And I think that it's a primary mission of local government to protect the citizens, and the children are the ones that need the most protection. So, the schools are spending about $28,000 a year educating a child in our public schools, and they're not going to be very well educated if they're stoned out of their minds from these fake devices. So, do we need to make a motion or anything? Okay, then
Can I just make sure that, is there any other discussion about this item? Yes, go ahead and make your motion.
Okay, I'll move that we approve the ordinance.
I'll second. Please vote.
And motion for the introduction of the ordinance is carries by unanimous vote. And the title is an ordinance prohibiting the sale of vaping devices disguised as other products by amending sections 8.33.050 and 8.33.090 of Chapter 8.33 of Title 8 of the El Cajon Municipal Code relating to regulation of licensure of tobacco retailers.
Thank you. There are no second reading and adoption of ordinances on today's agenda. And that brings us to closed session. And I'd like to ask our city attorney to recite the titles and lead us into the closed session.
Thank you, Mayor Wells. The City Council will be going into closed session of 5 separate items. The first is a closed session for a conference with legal counsel on existing litigation pursuant to paragraph 1 of subdivision D of Government Code section 54956.9. It involves Christine Greer versus City of El Cajon in a workers' compensation action, claim number 2202 20148. The next item is a conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. The property is located at 425 West Main Street. The negotiating party and city's negotiators are listed on the agenda, and under negotiation would be price and terms for payment for acquisition of property. The next item is a conference with legal counsel on anticipated litigation and initiation of litigation pursuant to paragraph 4, subdivision D of section 54956.9. There's one potential case. The next one is another conference with legal counsel on anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation pursuant to paragraph 4 of subdivision D of section 54956.9. Again, one potential case. And the last item is a closed session for conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code section 54956.8. The property is described by APN 489-130-59-00. The negotiating parties and the city's negotiators are identified in the agenda, and under negotiation would be price and terms of payment for the sale of property.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion then to adjourn to closed session.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to close session. We'll be back in a few minutes to conclude the meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back from closed session. I'd like to ask our attorney to report on closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council met in closed session on 5 items. Item number 15, the City Council gave direction to the city's legal counsel on that item. Item 16, direction was given to the city's negotiators on that item. And item 17, direction was given to legal counsel on that item. 18, no action was taken. And 19, direction was given to the city's negotiators on that item.
This brings us to...
and I should mention that Councilmember Goebel had a conflict of interest on number 18 and could not participate and was disqualified from participating and left. Did not attend that part.
Thank you very much, Council. This brings us to adjournment. The regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council, El Cajon Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency, held this 11th day of March 2025, is adjourned until Tuesday, March 25th, 2025 at 3 o'clock p.m. Thank you very much.